Lilies of Life. These are a cool thing that some of you may already know about, some may not. Kind of depends on what books or shows you've read or seen. So as most people know, D&D kind of breaks down to like three main pillars. Combat and interaction are the first two. Stab things, roleplay, gotta have those. But exploration is the last one. It's it's one of the bigger ones for the DM as well. It's world building. DM builds the world, fills it with cool things, storyline, all that stuff, neat details. Players explore it. Exploration is important in pretty much every tabletop role playing game. If you're not exploring, well, then you're pretty much like locked in a little box, and everything's just been set out for you. Gotta have exploration. And one of the best parts about world building is getting to fill it with neat and interesting things that your players will like to explore and find and be like, wow, this is fucking cool. Always gotta have those fucking cool moments. And one of the things that I find fucking cool are the Lilies of Life. Now, what the Lilies of Life are. Basically, it's this small golden plant that, when blooms, yields this nectar that is fabled to make the drinker of it, if you drink a full cup of it, immortal. Immortality shits the rage with pretty much like half the villains in the universe. They're always after it. Some players are too. The more years you have on your life, the more adventures you get to go on. It's an important factor. You can't adventure when you're like, an old, cripply man. Unless you're a wizard. If you're a wizard and you're an old man, you're probably more effective than you were when you were young. But if you're like a ranger or a fighter or a barbarian, when age catches up with you, things aren't looking so great. And obviously, a tabletop adventure game, you can technically, you can kind of cap your character from ever aging. You can, I mean, you don't even have to change your age, technically. And obviously, if you swap between characters all the time, this isn't a factor either. But maybe for longer drawn-out campaigns, or for those of you that like to, keep track of your character age. Yeah, for more, longer drawn-out campaigns, or those of you that like to keep track of your character age, age is, it's something that eventually catches up to you. Obviously, you can't adventure forever. Sometimes you die. And the Lilies of Life were a way of preventing that. Yeah, so, for those that actually keep track of age, or, age is more present in their campaign, or they don't want to get one-shot by a ghost, Lilies of Life are an interesting solution. Or maybe you need a villain that's, taking years to plan stuff. It's like a common idea that, like fiends or liches can, they have master plans that take, years to put in action. Maybe like some random fucking dwarf has a master plan, but he doesn't want to be a lich or a fiend. Well, Lilies of Life, looking real good. Looking real good. So yeah, they're pretty damn interesting. There's more to them than that, and I'll touch on that shortly. But first, what the Lilies of Life are and where they're from. So, if you already know what the Lilies of Life are from, you'd probably be like, yeah, he's leading me up to this. But they're from a book called Deltora Quest. And this was written, I believe, by Emily Rodda. She's written a lot of stuff in this setting. The setting of Deltora, if I recall correctly. She's got like 3 or 4 different book series. Probably like 12-ish books in total, maybe more. Deltora Quest is at least 8 books. The actual Deltora Quest series is 8 books. And there's multiple more series as well, so there's probably more than 12. And I believe the book series actually had either a cartoon or anime adaptation. I think I've seen an episode or 2 of it, but I've not watched the whole thing, so I don't know how true to the book series it is. But the quick summary of Deltora Quest is that there is a main city, a main faction, the city of Deltora, I believe, that it was formed a long time ago by Blacksmith, who united 7 kind of warring tribes, 7 tribes that were all separate entities together against a foreign invader, the Shadow Lord. A Shadow Lord controlling a far off portion of the continent, walled in by mountains. Kind of think of it as like mini Mordor. He came and was attempting to conquer everything, control it all. And this blacksmith, I think his name was Adin, but I don't remember. He forged a belt, and in that belt put 7 legendary gems from each of the tribe. Each of the tribe had their own gem into it, and created the Belt of Deltora to ward off the Shadow Lord, and successfully did so, and he became the first king of the United Kingdoms of Deltora. Fast forward a bunch, belt is compromised. Shadow Lord, over tens and tens of maybe hundreds of years even, has infiltrated the city, gotten spies in high up positions, and slowly made the bloodline of Aden weaker and weaker, and enforced rules that caused problems. Made it like the belt was more ceremonious and something to be worn at all times. All this kind of stuff. Got a hold of the belt, stole the 7 gems. They couldn't be destroyed, so what he did is he scattered them to the 7 deadliest locations on the continent with horrible guardians. And so the basis of the story is that the characters, Leaf, Barda, and eventually Jasmine, have to go on an adventure across the entire continent, to all these horrible locations, face these horrible guardians to retrieve the 7 gems, reforge the belt, and drive the Shadow Lord back out of Deltora. And the first of these locations is the Forest of Silence, which contains the Lilies of Life. It's important. So basically, Leaf is our pretty much main character. Barda and Jasmine are pretty much the 2 best buddies to him. So Leaf is the son of another blacksmith. Many years, I believe, 15 or 16 years after the Shadow Lord had taken over Deltora, and he's setting out in place of his now injured father, with Barda, an ex-guard of the palace before it was taken over, to go recover the gems. So they set out and they make their way out of the city to the Forest of Silence. So they get there, and they don't get to the Forest of Silence. They get to another place. I believe it's called the Wendell. It's another forest before the Forest of Silence that leads to it. In fact, it's a shortcut. There's another road that goes around to the Forest of Silence, but it adds an extra, I think it was 6 days, week maybe, to the journey. It adds time. And so they get there, and Barda was like, "Oh, the Wendell. I've heard of this. It's a shortcut, but people also say the road's dangerous." And he kind of looks to Leaf, who, is this young, 16-year-old kid, and he's like, "I probably shouldn't bring you through this. It isn't safe." And Leaf immediately goes into that, "Oh, you don't have to look after me. I'm independent," mode. And, they get in a brief little exchange, almost like a miniature argument. And Leaf is like, "Yeah, we can totally go through the forest. Don't worry, I'll look after myself." So they go through. They get fucked. The forest is full of these little insect or rodent creatures that make this high-pitched humming noise that eventually, paralyzes you. It's loud and it's painful, and the further they go in, the louder it gets. And they're running, hands clamped over their ears. These things, they pass out from the pain. And they wake up paralyzed as the sun's setting. It's evening, and they can't move. They're terrified, but they're confused as to why they hadn't been eaten yet. Then a raggedy forest girl lands on the floor between them, and immediately starts talking to not them and not herself, but small animals on her shoulders. I believe a crow, or was it a raven? It might have been, I think it was a raven. And a small furry thing that might be a squirrel or chipmunk. I don't actually think it's ever described what her other pet is. Its name is Philly, I believe. I don't know what... It doesn't matter. But she lands there and immediately begins searching them. And they're like, "Yo, why are you robbing us? Help us." And she totally ignores them. And the thing is, she thinks they're either bandits or Grey Guards, which are soldiers of the Shadow Lord. Apparently, Grey Guards used to come through this path a lot, and sometimes they would get caught and end up here to be eaten and killed. And she would loot them before that happened, and get useful stuff out their body. Namely clothing, weapons, stuff like that, money, and pretty much any other trinkets or oddities that they had. and she thinks they're Grey Guards. And, you know, right as she's taking everything away, she grabs Leaf's cloak and, you know, hops off into the trees, and Leaf shouts, "Hey, give that back! My mother made that for me." You know, like he, you know, he's kind of accepted that he's gonna die at that point, but he wants his mother's cloak back, and that pretty much signals to Jasmine like, oh hey, they're not Grey Guards, they had parents, because Grey Guards are like horrible abominations that are made in like a factory or something like that. They're pretty awful, and so she comes back, and she gives them this quick medicine that, you know, helps with the paralyzing, the last of it. And, you know, they, right as they, you know, get unparalyzed, this giant wriggling monster comes out of the darkness, and, you know, is making their way towards them. So they climb up in a tree and narrowly escape. Well, they head back to Jasmine's place. It's like a little nest or like little tree house up in the trees. She doesn't go anywhere near the forest floor. And, you know, they eat some, like, you know, they have a simple light dinner, just, you know, some fruits and stuff like that. And they're like, Leaf and Bard are like, shit, that thing that tried to kill us, we gotta kill it. That's gotta be the Guardian. And Jasmine's just sitting there laughing like, oh, you think that's the worst thing in the forest? You guys are dumb. This place is awful. And they're like, what the hell? Oh no, well where's the, you know, what's the most dangerous part then? And Jasmine's like, probably the center of the forest. Forest silence. People die there. People die everywhere, but people really die there. They're like, well, shit, we gotta go there. Can you lead us? And they're like, and she's sitting there like, I shouldn't have saved you if you're just gonna go there. You're gonna die anyways. But, you know, I guess I can help you out. And so, you know, they set off in the morning, and they travel along through the tree tops. And they have a little bit of exchange. They kind of become, I don't know, acquaintances a little bit. Jasmine, you know, talks to the trees, finds the good trees, not the evil ones, and leads them there. They get to the center of the Forest of Silence. Massive wall of vines in the trees keeps them from going any further. It extends above the treetops in like almost like a dome structure. Massive wall, incredibly thick, cannot be passed. They spy an entrance on the ground. They're like, okay, this has got to be it. Thanks, Jasmine. Thank you for leading us here. You don't have to come any farther. And so Leaf and Barda, you know, they can't tell her exactly what they're doing there. But Jasmine probably has an idea. I don't think it's explicitly explained if she knows about the Lilies of Life, but she might. And so she's like, whatever. And they jump down there. They walk in the entrance, and here's the setting. Immediately, there is a small mound in the middle of the massive dome with a couple of golden withered-ish plants on it. The inside of the dome is kind of muddy and gross. I think it's described there's a couple of skeletons in there, potentially some bodies. And there's a massive knight in golden armor that immediately shouts like, "Halt!" He's holding this big sword, you know, it's resting on the ground. He's like, "Halt, come no further." And I think he calls them like bandits or something like that, or thieves. And he's like, "You shall not steal my prize from me." They immediately notice in the hilt of this giant knight's sword is a topaz. A specific topaz, one of the 7 gems from the belt of Deltora. So they're like, well, there's our goal. They gotta commit. And immediately the guy, the giant knight, you know, asks for their names and accuses them of being thieves, attempting to steal the Lilies of Life, his prize. And they're like, no, we aren't here for that. And he's like, you lie. And, you know, motherfucker has like innate at-will, you know, hold person, like fucking 9th level hold person, immediately just paralyzes both of them. Spell save DC's like 26. They can't do shit. And he's mad. He's like, you know, you're not the first thief to come in here and attempt to steal my prize. I've guarded it too long and too well. You shan't have it. And he drags them over, you know, fucking force wills them over right next to the plants, you know, gets them on the ground, and he prepares to cut them down. You know, he says he's going to feed the lilies with their blood. And they're in like, oh shit, we gotta do something mode. So they start trying to get him to talk. They start asking questions, and they're like, you know, oh fucking mighty knight, we're sorry, but at least, tell us their name, why you got this place, that kind of shit. They're trying to get him to talk, get the villain to go on a speech. Kind of does. Kind of plays into it. Lets him know that his name is Gorl. He came, he learned the Lilies of Life with his brothers many, many years ago. And he and his two brothers set out in search of them. And they, I believe they mentioned that, no, okay, so he and his brothers, they find them, and what happens is that, the two brothers, they see the lilies, and they find the lilies as they're blooming, and nectar is beginning to drip down from the leaves. The two brothers immediately rush straight for the lilies, and Gorl freaks out because he knows that he needs a full cup of the nectar for himself, and he's worried that between all three of them, there won't be enough for him. And so he attacks his brothers as their backs return. And a very short fight, because he's got the upper hand, he had the surprise attack. He kills both of them. And by this point, the lilies have stopped blooming, and the nectar is just puddles on the ground, seeping into it. But he's got the lilies all to himself. And so, although he was upset about, losing the lilies here, he knew that in time they would bloom again, and so he would guard them. He built up the vine wall to help protect him, and ever since, he's been standing there waiting for the lilies to bloom again. It's kind of left ambiguous as to how much time he's been there, until they start talking about Deltora and the events of the Shadow Lord, and Gorl is like, I know nothing of these things. And they ask him some more questions, and it turns out that he has been there, like, guarding those plants since before the first invasion of the Shadow Lord, before the Belt of Deltora ever existed. He has been there for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. But he has not drinking the nectar, because they quickly find out that when they get him to talk about, they get him to feel regret, they get him to, feel like misery, like he feels like back into a corner, like he starts talking like, I had to do it, I had to kill them, I needed a full cup of nectar, they should have known that I needed the nectar, they forced my hand. And Leaf and Barda get him to feel like regret, and he's getting defensive, and he like his will loosens, and like they're able to regain control of their bodies, and they quickly try and leap out and like attack him, and I believe Barda stabs him, I believe like right between like his breastplate and like his leggings. The sword goes right through, no blood. Turns around and immediately like cuts Barda, and they're gasp in horror as they realize that there is no body in the armor. Gorl has crumbled to dust a long, long time ago, and it is just his willpower that remains, his will to guard the lilies. And so this horrible titanic suit of armor is the only thing left of him, and it stands over the lilies. So Barda's bleeding. Gorl, this ancient creature, is about to attack Leaf, and they're about to be fucking dead. And then massive tree branch crashes down and destroys Gorl, and you just see Jasmine up there, and she's like, yeah, I cut this down while you fuckers were keeping him busy. I knew you needed help. And so there's like this moment of like relief and like, hooray. But Barda's over there bleeding the fuck out. He's pretty much gone. And Leaf is sitting there like in shock mode, over his his friend that's dying. Something pretty fucking lit happens. When Jasmine cuts down that branch, it tears a whole bunch of vines with it, and so like a large hole opens in the roof of the vine wall, and sunlight bleeds in onto the Lilies of Life. They start to bloom, and nectar starts seeping out, and Jasmine and Leaf are like, oh shit. One of them runs over and cups their hand in it, and grabs some of the nectar and splashes on Barda's chest where the wound is, and gets a little on his lips. And You know, it's like that thing, you know, someone's down and dying, so you like, you know, force the health potion down their lips. They like, you know, put this golden nectar on him, and it heals him, and he recovers and doesn't die. You know, brink of death, comes back. And, you know, they're celebrating, and then Jasmine's like, oh shit, the lilies are still blooming. We gotta not waste this. And she goes over, and, you know, the little bottle that I believe had the medicine in it that she cured their paralysis from earlier, I believe she uncorks that and, like, you know, tries to capture some and gets, like, you know, an ounce roughly. Not very much. And, you know, Leaf is like, so you gonna drink it? And she's like, no. Not only is this not enough to make someone, you know, live forever. Goral said you needed a full cup, but even then I don't think I'd want to. But she keeps it because obviously it's shown that it has, you know, extremely powerful healing properties. But, you know, that's pretty much the summary of Lilies of Life. You know, this super rare fabled treasure, horrible guardian, even, like, you know, cool setting, Forest of Silence, badass name. It's a forest full of a whole bunch of horrible creatures, completely silent during the day. During the night, it's full of monsters. It's fucking great. And the Lilies of Life are an incredibly unique thing that I haven't seen the likes of before, and I really like them because there's a lot you can do with them. It's a plant that offers, you know, a really unique thing. Your, you know, youth, your vitality back. The probably the most similar thing I can think of is like the Fountain of Youth, but like, unlike the fountain with the lilies, there's the issue of, is there enough left over? Like, you know, the Fountain of Youth, Pool of Youth, it's usually like a large pool of water or something like that. It's usually not a question of like how many people can use it. Instead, it's more of a how can we find it, how can we get to it, you know, how dangerous is it to get there, you know, what guardians does it have. And then once you actually have it, you're set, usually. You could always pull some Pirates of the Caribbean shit, you know, where you have to, you know, one person has to give their life, the other person takes it. But yeah, so the Fountain of Youth is probably like the closest you can get to this. There's a lot of things you can do with the Lilies of Life. They make a fantastic piece you can put into pretty much any, like, fantasy world. It's, you know, very cool, and you know, obviously with alchemists being a thing, this is probably something that's really sought after, both for like alchemical science and research, as well as just like in general. Like kings probably want this, probably like upper priests probably want this, villains definitely want this. Although villains might include those latter two. You know, immortality it's pretty high up there on the things that people want list. Lilies of Life offers it, or so it seems. You don't have to do it that way. You don't have to run it where, you know, a cup makes you live forever. Obviously, you know, a cup live forever doesn't mean you're, you know, invincible. You still get fucking stabbed. Okay, but you don't age. You don't have to do it that way either. In fact, there's a lot of interesting ways you can run it. There are a couple that I can think of. The first doesn't work at all. It's just a myth. There's no backing to it. This is actually one of the ways I have it run. One of the dungeons that I have that my players are getting to in one of my games recently is a temple devoted to these golden lilies after a rumor started floating around of something that could make you live forever. When they got to this dungeon, it's littered with bodies, and there's plant monsters everywhere, and a whole bunch of traps. And the traps look like things that are like, you know, like actually built in the temple, to like jury-rigged ones that people might have set. Like bear traps, you know, behind doors, you know, wires across like the wall. So they range from like, you know, tiles that actually sink down that had to be built into the temple to ones that people might have left there trying to guard the temple for themselves, including like magic runes and stuff like that. In fact, one of the first things that happens when they enter is a programmed illusion sets off that makes a, you know, floating skull, kind of like a demi-lich skull, appear and curse the players, and, you know, okay. Not like curse, not like a magical one, but, you know, fucking yell at the players and be like, leave, this is my treasure, if you enter you will surely meet your doom. You know, kind of get that whole thing going on. And one of the things that I thought was pretty clever about this, I took a little bit of inspiration from a couple of other dungeons in how I designed this, but one of the things that I thought was pretty unique that I did in this is that immediately from when you enter, down a long hallway, you can see the prize. Long hallway, there is a room with like grass and moss all in it, and vines hanging from the ceiling that sunlight is filtering in from, and a small like little mound, a small little pedestal in the center with some golden plants on it. There are a whole bunch of offshoots of down this hallway that lead to like separate areas, and you know the whole place is it's a pretty massive map. But if you walk straight down the end of the hallway, what happens is right as you get to the threshold of where the hallway goes into the large open room, there's a wall of force. Prevents people from getting through. Step on the ground. Spikes. The big ones. Spears. Almost lance-sized spikes. You know, the whole wall, the entire thing, out all at once. This trap is fucking lethal, and not only is it lethal, the thing is if you didn't get rid of the wall of force to begin with, then you'll probably get, one, very fucked up, and two, you won't be on the other side of the wall of force. You'll be back at the, you know, beginning of the trap after you get out of it, if you get out of it. Then you have all these massive, like, you know, fucking metal barriers in the way and a wall of force. Because, you know, before, if it's just a wall of force, you know, if you have a caster that's got, like, disintegrate or dispel magic in a high enough level spell slot, you can just get rid of it. Like, you can just, poof, wish it away, and you can continue on through. But once the trap is triggered, and, you know, the massive, like, metal web is in the way, too, all of a sudden, you can't get through that either. And those aren't going back into the wall once they're out, unless someone, you know, knows how the trap works and resets the entire thing, which could take a very long time, and there are some very not friendly things in here. Alternatively, there are two other ways in that you can see from the very entrance, one on the left of the room, one on the right of the room. Both of these have their own ways in. The left entrance is actually hidden behind a whole bunch of secret doors and stuff like that. It's a more hidden entrance, but it's safer. Also has a wall of force in front of it, but no trap this time, which means you just, you know, you either have to be prepared and have someone with dispel magic or disintegrate as a caster, or, you know, have a spell scroll or something, or a wand. But this is the safer option. The other one is full of traps and stuff like that. But you can get into the room. Lilies are fake. Just golden statue. The statue's worth a fair bit of money. It's an incredibly well done sculpture, but it's just gold. No nectar. And it turns out that pretty much everyone that has died in this place has pretty much either died still under the impression that eventually they'll bloom, or has eventually realized that this whole place is, you know, a waste, but it's too late for them. In fact, that programmed illusion in the beginning and a lot of the magical runes and traps that are in here, there is a old dead caster's body, an old wizard's body, somewhere in here. It has a journal talking about how he believes that they are fake, but he believes that there are real ones elsewhere and that these are just a ploy. Adventure hook. So you could just leave it up there. They could just be fakes. Maybe you don't want to give, you know, your players youth things or immortality. You don't want that in there because it's like easily abusable. You could easily leave it there. They could be fake. You could do other things with it too, though. One of the things you could do is have catches on it. Like, for example, one of the things you could do, I believe there's a potion of... I don't think it's a potion of youth. Let's see. There is a potion in D&D 5e. I believe it is very rare, and it is called Potion of Longevity, I think? Yeah, so Potion of Longevity, when you drink it, it reduces your age by 7 to 12 years. It's a d6 plus 6 years to a minimum of 13, so you can't become any younger than 13. But the thing with this potion is that the potion, every time you drink it afterwards, there's a cumulative 10% chance that you instead age by 7 to 12 years instead. So, complete side note, I don't know why the fuck D&D 5e feels like they need to throw these catches into, like, cool magic shit. Like, this edition has the most catches on it that I've, like, seen before. But, I mean, I'm not too well-versed in many of the old school ones, but, like, it just seems like there's so much stuff that has, like, catches on it. Like, you get this cool thing, boy, you're probably gonna get fucked over. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know why it feels need to do that kind of stuff, but whatever. not the end of the world. You don't even have to use that, and plus, like, what's the chance of a player even getting this? Because like in 5e, you can't craft things by default. The DM has to allow you to do that. It's an optional rule, which means usually this thing has to be placed in an adventure somewhere. So your chance of even getting more than one of these is pretty slim as is. But yeah, regardless, the raw version of it is you drink it, reduces your age for 7 to 12 years. Every time after that, there's a 10% cumulative chance that you instead agent. For the Lilies of Life, you could very well just have it where it just functions like this. It just reduces your current age by like 10 years. And I mean, if I were you, I would do away with the aging part of this, like the part that makes you get older. Because like if you drink from the fabled Lilies of Life and get older, people are gonna be real fucking pissed. But you know, these things are way rarer than a potion. This is like legendary status. Do not make a whole forest full of these things or a whole swamp full of these things, unless you want to tweak it a little bit. You could very well just have it function like that, where you only get a few years off, and that means that people have to keep returning to it. And the thing with this means that if this is like a limited supply thing, like say it only blooms every couple of years, or it needs like specific circumstances, like it needs like so much like certain nutrients, maybe certain like fertilizer, sunlight, enough water, needs to be in a really good condition, the right temperature, and then a certain amount of years have to pass. This really limits how much there is, which means that only certain people can get a hold of this unique property. And if the players are the ones that get it, that means that they have to continuously guard this as well, which can lead to some very interesting things. It's always kind of fun for me to like flip it around on the players. Like normally in D&D, it's like the players are assaulting something that's being defended by the monsters, the enemies, liches, devils, orcs, goblins, or whatever, kobolds. Like they're the ones going into the dungeons to pillage and loot it. In a situation like this, they then have to guard their treasure, because it's it's what's keeping them going. If these adventures have been around for hundreds of years, the longer they're alive, the more important those lilies are, because like you get used to being immortal and you don't want that to go away. So it's like an interesting twist on it. Of course, you can also add some like some catches on it if you're that kind of guy. Maybe you want it to be more readily accessible, but has a catch on it. Maybe it's like an addiction kind of thing. Maybe there's some penalties that go along with it. It could be like a trade-off, something like that. Maybe like while you're drinking it or some shit, it has like a stat penalty or like some kind of disability or some shit. I don't know. It's got something that goes with it. Who knows? Of course, you could always just keep it as is. Nothing wrong with that. Just I believe there's a boon of immortality is one of the I think it's one of the rewards in the DMG for epic leveling. Yeah, boon of immortality. You stop aging. You're immune to any effect that would age you, and you can't die from old age. That's all it does. You can still be killed by any other means. You just can't die from aging. So maybe you're running like a higher level campaign. Maybe you just got finished with like one of the Wizards of the Coast ones, and you're like all your characters are like level 15, and you're starting to do homebrew from this point. Upper level characters, 17 and up, when you get to the epic levels, eventually, when you finally cap at 20, it recommends to start giving boons and blessings and stuff like that. D&D 5e doesn't have epic levels yet. There's a lot of homebrew stuff out there for it, but it's not raw. And so this boon does exist, and the Lilies of Life, maybe you didn't want to have like a god give them the boon. Maybe the Lilies of Life bestow the boon. Maybe the end of their long journey, whatever their adventure you build around, whatever you build up is, maybe it ends with the Lilies of Life being the reward that bestows this boon to them. Hell, you could even have multiple types of plants, and they just get to like choose one, and each one bestows a different boon. I don't fucking know. In case they want a different boon. Or maybe it's like a collect them all mission where every individual quest you set up ends in a certain type of boon, and maybe like each player picks a boon that they want, and they go set out for each individual person's boon, and maybe one of the players wants the boon of immortality for their character. They want maybe their bard to live forever and become god of travelers, and go fuck Zeus's daughter or some shit. Boon of immortality. And so for his quest, when it gets to his turn, maybe they set out the order they're going to do it in. They get to his turn, they go on the quest for the Lilies of Life, and he gets this boon of immortality. there's a lot of cool things you can do with this. It's very easy to change. You don't need the Force of Silence, obviously. You can just pick the lilies up and transplant them to whatever you want. You could keep the Force of Silence. It's very it's very easy to mess with this idea. So I love using this thing. There's a lot of fantastic stuff from Deltora Quest. Very, very useful source of inspiration. If you haven't read the books, I highly recommend it. They aren't the most complex reading in the world. I believe they're targeted for the teenage audience, young teens probably. I don't know, like 15, 16 is probably like the advised age. I don't quite remember. It's been a little while since I've actually read them, but I remember them pretty dang well because I love these books. I've read them multiple times. But they're not the most advanced reading. It's not Tolkien. Still very good. I believe there's 8 books in total. And there's multiple other series, including I believe there's a sequel called like Shadowlands, Deltora Shadowlands, something like that, where I believe it's got the same main characters, but this time they're going to the Shadowlands to rescue prisoners from when the Shadow Lord was controlling Deltora, which is very interesting. I believe that's 3 books, so the actual, like, if you count that as part of the main series thing, which it's pretty much a true sequel to it. Same characters and everything, same events, it follows the events after the main books. It's 11 books in total. There's a bunch more on top of that as well. I haven't read any of the other ones yet. I really ought to. In addition, there's also the show based off of Emily Rodda's books. Deltora Quest has a show that I mentioned. I believe it's an anime. I don't remember. I believe it's finished. I believe it is finished. It's like 50 or 60 episodes or something like that. It's fairly long. I'm pretty dang sure it's finished. I don't know how true to the books it is, though. From what I recall, it's pretty. It follows pretty well. There are a couple of minor things changed about it, but I don't think there's any major changes to the show that wasn't there in the books. I can't say for myself though. I've yet to watch them. I really need to sit down and do that at some point. But yeah, there's a bunch more stuff on there at some point, and I'll probably make some things on some of the other ones as well, because Emily Rodda's got some fantastic ideas. Very, very creative and excellent author, and some of her ideas has helped make my games incredibly fun at the table. So yeah, hope you like the idea, and hopefully you think the Lilies of Life might be a cool thing to put in your game. If it is, I'm glad to introduce you to them. Hopefully they're fun, and hopefully your players think they're cool as fuck. I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.